Welcome to the Three Wise Men of Divorce, Money, Psych, and Law podcast. Sit down with the California divorce experts, financial divorce consultant Mark Hill, psychologist Scott Weiner, and attorney Shawn Weber for a frank and casual conversation about divorce, separation, co-parenting, and the difficult decisions real people like you face during these tough times. We know that if you are looking at divorce or separation, it can be scary and overwhelming. With combined experience of over 70 years in divorce and conflict management, we are here for you and look forward to helping by sharing our unique ideas, thoughts, and perspectives on divorce, separation, and co-parenting.
Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to our podcast, and we are not angry about your being here, but unfortunately, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Why are you angry? I'm not angry. Are you angry, Scott?
No, but that's because, I'm just getting even.
Who are you getting even with?
I don't know you guys so far, nothing much.
Well, I'm angry that you're on a telephone.
And I'm angry that I'm going to move into my 10th hour of work today and I'm burned out.
I'm not really angry.
I know you're not.
But you are on a telephone. We should tell our listeners that. But that's okay.
Yeah, folks. Anyone who's listening to this, I'm not on my typical Zoom computer with the great microphone that Macy, shout out to Macy, gave me, loaned me, what have you. I'm on an iPhone at the Redlands Municipal Airport. So, folks, I hope you can understand us well enough. And here we go. Anger.
Okay. Anger. In divorce, have you noticed this? Sometimes people get angry. Have you noticed that?
Oh, it's so subtle and profound of you guys to say so.
It's like the biggest no-brainer ever that people kind of get upset with each other. We were kind of thinking about, sometimes anger in life is important. It's important to express it, but when you're trying to negotiate your divorce, it can get in the way sometimes.
Oh, it's worse than that.
Well, please do tell.
All right. Hello, folks. I'm Scott Weiner. I'm a clinical psychologist and attorney, but I do mostly a psychotherapy practice and do coaching in collaborative divorce with these gentlemen. Here's the deal about that anger situation. We think, in the therapy world about, let's split up experience into the things we think, the things we feel, and the things we do. That's an old-fashioned idea. It's called experience balance, and it's actually psychoanalytic. It's real old. But it's not a bad way to split up experience. Now, it's one thing to have angry feelings, but in divorce, when people are feeling outraged with each other, sometimes they, in almost a quasi-legal way, feel that they're entitled to act on it, that it's fair, that somebody else says, somebody's done somebody wrong here, and then they act out that anger. And what that does is precipitate a whole series of reactions and of convolutions. And so even really reasonable people, fair-minded people, wind up outraged. Now, most people don't get divorced because they're really happy with each other or things are going great, right? People say, well, that person is angry without reason. They'll say things like that. Well, a lot of feelings seem unreasonable to others. But this is going to be, I would argue, part of almost any divorce. I don't know, Shawn, have you ever seen a divorce without anger?
No. I've even seen these people come in and they seem like they're still in love and they joke with each other and they laugh with each other. And then I think to myself, oh, this is going to be a breeze. And then we hit that certain subject where all hell breaks loose. And then you're like, oh, That's why they're getting divorced.
I always say that, you're going to find out why the divorce is happening at some point during the case, no matter how nicely they're playing the first time that you sit down with them.
Yeah. And, I mean, okay, Dr. Weiner, I find that anger is kind of
Dr. Weiner.
A little hostile, huh?
I'm expressing my anger, my inner rage. But I find that the rage sometimes is an expression of fear. Is that true?
Yeah.
Like the fight or flight, kicks in, and sometimes people don't want to flee; they want to fight.
More generally, traditionally, again, therapists often discuss anger as a secondary experience following hurt. You get hurt, you get injury, psychological injury, injury to a person's feeling of either safety or well-being, injury to self-esteem, so on and so forth. Somebody has either put down or hurt or mocked or, maltreated somebody. And then, the anger, I've heard therapists say things like you can always trace, the genesis of anger from an initial hurt. I don't believe you can always do any darn thing, but, I've seen it happen a lot though. I think of the people and the situations that I've been angry about, I can almost always trace it to a hurt feeling. I can.
Yeah. Yep. There's like a betrayal. Or you mentioned like somebody's, financial security is somehow attacked.
Right.
Or their integrity is impeached.
Yeah.
We see that a lot.
Well, and then do you see people that don't realize how angry they are?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Or deny that they have angry feelings. Oh, no, I'm doing fine.
Smiling rage, we call it.
Yeah, those people kind of scare me a little bit.
Well, I mean, what scares us in other people's behavior? It's when they're unconscious. Usually if somebody, other than terrible psychopaths who are totally aware of what they're doing and they're just good with it.
And they relish in it.
Yeah.
It's almost it's their evil joy. But for Mr. and Mrs. Front Porch, that's all of us pretty much. We each have a blind side. The story, The Emperor's New Clothes, isn't about somebody else. It's about all of us. We walk through our lives with this unconscious set of habits. And sometimes in divorce, we see a person that is just outraged, but they're just trying so hard to be civil. And as Mark said, you find out why. Sooner or later, something trips the switch.
And the other thing is that I've noticed something, Shawn, you do very well when we work together, is you will label it. You're really upset right now, aren't you? And it's the people that go, no, I'm fine. That's the ones we worry about. The ones that go, yes, I'm upset. Okay, you've owned it. It's out there and you've acknowledged it and you paid attention to that anger. I think once you identify that kind of helps move the process forward. It's the people that keep denying they're angry and hurt and upset who are the ones that should worry you because they're not even realizing it themselves. And so they may not be able to control it.
An anger that you're conscious of, you can control. An anger that you're not conscious of, you're not controlling, are you? Because you don't even know it's there.
Right.
Pretty much.
So, I mean, we've seen this. Person seems perfectly fine. Next thing you know, they snap and hit their spouse.
Yep.
And then what?
Well, it doesn't go well. That doesn't improve the situation. A case probably 15 years ago I had with a woman who was completely kept saying she was fine with her husband's new girlfriend, fine that they were in her house. Well, one day she snapped. She drove her car across his lawn into the bay window of the house. Fortunately, there was no one sitting in that room, but she literally drove her car through the window. because she was so angry, so hurt, is really going back to what Scott was saying. She was just hurt by this and couldn't admit it until she popped and blew,
Oh, I had a case, this was years ago, and some gossip had gotten into the ethos, into their third party friends. And you know how you probably played that telephone game in high school where you tell a story on one side of the room, and then when it gets to the other side of the room, it's a totally different story. And this happens in divorce in spades. Everybody's talking about what's going on, and apparently something gotten out and gotten twisted. And this person was so upset about it, and I could see her just kind of keeping her composure. And then they started talking about this issue, and she got so upset she took a hot cup of coffee and hurled it at the other party. Just absolutely exploded. Coffee all over my conference room. Obviously I can't mediate a case if people are hurling coffee at each other. But it was just somebody just lost control. It's this emotional hijacking that sometimes happens. You hear about people talking about it in emotional intelligence circles where they talk about how you lose control of your rational thought.
And we're very good in relationships at winding the other one up. Boy, do we know how to push a button for our spouses. And I see that occurs sometimes, that, they've had this argument 20,000 times before, and they just wind each other up, and you can see it happening, and it's not something they can control. And I've had a situation where, from my own personal standpoint with an ex-spouse, where I could never out anger her. Whatever I did, she would go beyond it. And that is a dangerous situation to get into. You remember that movie with Shawn Connery? If they put your guy in the hospital, you put their guy in the morgue. You show up with a gun. They show up with a gun. You show up with a tank. It was the Elliot Ness, Untouchables movie. And that's what happens in these cases when people just up it every single time and escalate it, because they know what they're doing, and it may be subconscious, but they sometimes think that puts them at an advantage if they can show the other ones out of control.
And boy, does that mess up their lives. I mean,
doesn't it?
We had a podcast a few weeks ago about how to have a miserable divorce. And I think one way to have a miserable divorce is have no anger management at all. Just express your anger as often and as early as you can.
And feel justified about it.
And really? Stew on it. Well, I really am mad. And
I'm entitled to be mad. Wouldn't you be mad too?
He deserves it.
That blankety blank isn't going to get any of my pension. And we could talk about the things that cause the anger. I mean, you mentioned hurt, but what are the things that kind of cause the hurt in a divorce that we usually see? I mean, Mark, the obvious is a money issue, right?
Yep. Money issues. People fight more about money than anything else in marriages, more than sex, more than children. It's the money is number one. And there's feelings of the person that's making the money feels underappreciated. The person that's taking care of the home and not made the money feels resentful that the other person thinks the money should be theirs because, quote, they worked for it, whereas they've had a partnership. So it's very easy to get into a situation where we see this dynamic playing out. And the beauty of having done a lot of this work is that we can kind of arrest this process. First of all, we can identify it. I will often say, when couples are getting into it, I will say, well, we can continue down this road if you think this is being productive. And I stop. And you watch the body language change in the room. Whoa, 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 whoa. And what happens is perhaps we can refocus them. And, you don't want to spend expensive time with professionals like us fighting the battles of your marriage that never got resolved. Because guess what? We probably can't resolve those for you.
Which is a reason why I always counsel people, get out of the past. We get it that your marriage sucked. or that your feelings are hurt, that something happened that brought you here. But we got to figure out what to do now, and we got to move forward. If you wallow in the past, you're just going to rehearse over and over again in your mind that hurt that makes you so angry.
And if you want vengeance, alternative dispute resolution is not the place to get it.
Revenge is a dish best served cold.
It's also best served in court, where you can pay for the right to be angry.
Yeah. I always tell people, when you're in court, no one wins at court, even when they do win. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
And we've talked about, sometimes people go to court. Well, it's the principal. He did this to me, or she did that to me, and I need to stand up for the principal. And I always tell people, well, principals are really expensive. So think about this. Is this a hill you really need to die on? Or can we think of a more productive way to use your money?
I ask people to, when they feel emotional, think of what the outcome where they would like to be from this. What is their goal? What are they trying to achieve? And do they think this road that they're going down is going to get them to their goal?
I was thinking about your point, Scott, think, feel, and do.
I'm listening, Mark, to what you just said, and I'm kind of feeling this sort of sadness that we can't always choose when to be rational.
Yep.
And it makes so much sense to say, hey, you know what? This fight that you're fighting, first of all, it can't get you anywhere. There's no outcome from this. But then I stand back and I say, well, wait a minute. We're pretending to ourselves for a moment that human relationships are intelligently strategic, and under stress they almost never are. We regress to our more primordial, basic fight-flight things, and God, who the hell knows what's going to happen? I think that what we try to do in our work. I mean, we understand that people are going to stumble on, not only on these predictable areas of stress. Mark, you talked about money. Therapists often talk about the big three. There's money, sex, and the in-laws, which is extended family, intimacy, and money, of course. But there's going to be, that's what we try to do, folks listening. That's what we try to do, is we try to provide some sort of a bulwark in which these things can be expressed without becoming so inflammatory and without controlling the whole process,
Yeah. I mean, that's why I do the name that emotion game with people.
Yep.
They're really angry. You can tell they're really pissed off, and if you can kind of retool that anger as, wow, you sound really frustrated. You sound like you were hurt.
Yep.
Seems like you were betrayed. And then it's amazing how people change. They're really pissed off, and you can see the rage in their face. And then when you go to what the emotion really is, they kind of melt and then go back to that more of a hurt place. A person that's just hurt and in pain is not as dangerous as a person that's enraged.
Well, what you've done when you do that therapeutically, frankly, when you name it, it reifies, makes it real. It makes it a fact. And when you calmly say, you're really pissed. Yeah, I get it. It's almost as if some of the drama of expressing it in these ways is no longer necessary. And so the person has a choice oftentimes of returning to a rational set of expressions, which it's a lot cheaper for them to do their work that way rather than, spending 3 or 4 professional hourly rates venting, So, yeah, it gets done. it gets done. I've seen Shawn stop the action like that before. I have.
Now, I also got to say, one of the most important tools for people that just gets neglected when they're going through divorce is getting some mental health care, meeting with a therapist, dealing with what is making you angry or hurt.
Yeah.
So that doesn't bleed into your divorce case where you're spending a lot of money.
Well, I think a lot of people going through divorce are, they talk to their friends and this, that, and the other, but oh boy, people feel so lonely when they're going through it.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a reason why people get angry, right? It's not because this is easy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, sometimes anger could actually have a positive impact. It's rare, but I've seen it happen where somebody blows up and they really do get somebody else's attention. Our goal is to kind of label it, identify it, normalize it, and make sure that it doesn't sort of co-opt the meeting. If we can do that, then basically sometimes people need to be heard. What you did really hurt me, and I am really angry with you. And if someone can say that, the other person can hear it. And if they can be coached properly to say, okay, now let me hear you. Let me tell you what I heard. You're really angry with me because of X, Y, B. Did I get it? X, Y, Z. Did I get it right? Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Okay. Now they feel heard. Now, I have my own perspective about that, but I really didn't mean to hurt you. That goes a long way, to diffusing a situation, and perhaps we can put that behind us and then move on and be constructive. But until that anger was expressed, it may not have been possible to have a constructive meeting.
Well, and that expression is important. I remember this couple, they were very old couple. They were married 55 years, I think. And I remember this was back when I litigated. I remember the judge saying, "Oh, this makes my heart hurt that you're getting divorced after such a long time." But they had invested a lot in each other, and there was a lot of anger going on. And I remember negotiating with counsel with both the parties here, this elderly couple, and she wouldn't let things go, and she wouldn't let it go, and she wouldn't let it go. And I finally just took him in the other room. I said, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to let her say how angry she is. And I want you to just take it." And she went off on him. Finally, she ended it with, "And I hate you, and I never want to see you again." This older lady. And once she got that off her chest, we settled the case. But, sometimes you got to express it, I think.
Yep.
Am I onto something there, Scott?
I would certainly think so. I'll tell you what else. There's another element of this. People in these difficult marriages and these difficult attempts to terminate marriages, they're often stuck. They think they need the house. They think they need, I don't know, the picture of the trip to the mountains that's over the bedroom window. They wind up attached to these different things. And sometimes when there's fights, there is almost a more individual need to express the anger. And sometimes what happens after somebody really says their say, it almost frees them up to self-motivate after that. And then they can get on with life. They can get on to, wait a minute, I don't really need this jerk, or I don't really need this or that or the other. They become, they make the transformation into individual power and authority out of the need to be, connected and dependent. Sometimes expressing anger sets that loose. And sometimes, of course, it doesn't.
Well, I mean, the other thing is the recipient of the anger. How do you keep that person from then in turn feeling hurt and becoming angry?
And generally in a marriage, there's enough anger to go around on both sides.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, isn't it?
Yep.
There's that. But I find that a lot of times when I'm working with individuals, in a therapeutic situation where somebody's in a bad marriage, half the time they're just as pissed off at themselves for not doing something about it as they are pissed off at the other person. You know, it's like, what the is wrong with me for sticking with this jerk? You know, he's cheated on me. He's done this. He's done that. He's demeaned me. I said, well, you know, okay. I mean, you're assuming there's something wrong with you. What are you like that you think that this is, you know, sort of how you're operating? And I don't assume you're like that always, but there's something about your situation here. Well, yeah, we've been together for 20 years and we have these children. It's like, all right. So you think there's something wrong with being attached to trying to work that out? Maybe there is, but maybe there isn't, you know. But if it's mission impossible, then it's mission impossible. But people, go ahead, Mark.
Well, another thing I've noticed is that when, you know, people are going through the litany of how terrible their spouse is, just to say to them, and that's why you're divorcing them. Just by saying that sometimes goes, oh, that's right. I'm not going to have to do this for the rest of my life. You know,
they're at each other's throats and they're screaming at each other. And then I just say, time out. You guys, you know, you might want to consider a divorce.
Right.
You know, and then they kind of, it brings a little humor in, but it also, you know, yeah, that's why we're here. Right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it sucked. What now what? What are we going to do now? So what's the takeaway? I mean, what do you do so there's the folks, we said there's the folks that know they're angry and want to express it. There's the folks that don't know they're angry and then the anger flies out.
Well, it's ironic. Almost the real takeaway here, I think, is for us, for the people working with these people. It's like we expect it. We can treat it kindly. We can normalize it, and we don't have to fake it to normalize it because it is as normal and as average as it could possibly be. But I think that people are afraid of the rage coming out. I think people are afraid. Oh, I can't. I mean, I met with somebody today. I met with somebody today. I don't know. He's just. I can't really begin this process because he's going to be so pissed. He's going to be so vindictive and tricky and this and that and the other. And, my reassurance was, well, you are entitled not to be ready. You are entitled not to be ready until you're ready. But I want to give you a dose of realism. If you engage in this process, you will be wrapped around, as will he, by professionals that are sharp enough that nobody's going to pull stunts on anybody and get away with it. It's not going to happen. Are you going to feel badly? It's like each one of them doesn't want to be the one to pull the trigger, and they both want out.
Well, see, I'm glad they were talking to you. What about the couple where they don't have these professionals that see things the way that we do and actually use the anger as a way to, for lack of a better term, make more money? They stir the pot and they become a negative advocate for this person, an extension of this person's anger.
Yep.
Yeah. That's true.
I think people listening to this ought to be really wary of that they need to be careful that the person that they're seeking out to represent their interests or to help them through this process is not somebody that's going to make it worse. Make sure it's somebody that's going to help you.
Yep.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time. There are all these different levels of involvement of professionals to help you if you're going to engage in this process. And if you decide that what you really want and need is to go thermonuclear, that's what you're going to get. If you choose the biggest, toughest, meanest, what have you. But it's not those people aren't necessarily the smartest, I want to warn you.
No, they're usually the worst attorneys. They really are. They're usually the worst attorneys. They get the worst outcomes. Because what is thermonuclear going to do? It's mutual assured destruction. It's you set off a nuke, you're going to get burned.
Okay, well, to devil's advocate, I need that person because this other person is going to this, that, and the other, and he's always been a this, and she's always been a that, and she's got family behind her, and this, that, and the other. It's like, all right.
Well, that's why I
Well-
say make sure that the person you hire is not going to become an extension of your rage, but is simply going to be a well-placed tool.
At
for
the
what you
risk
need.
of upsetting Macy with a repeat of a story, a very well-known attorney up in Northern California, when she first started, and she's very much involved with Collaborative, she worked in a family law firm where a senior partner specialized in finding women who had been, shall we say, cuckolded, if a woman can be cuckolded.
I don't know what that word means.
It means there's been an affair. So husband has been unfaithful to wife, and he specialized in working with the women. And his standard line after he had heard all the terrible things the husband had done was this. And then, so we shall rip out his lying heart.
Yes.
He literally would say that, and the women would go away happy until, of course, the whole thing started and it went sideways.
Yeah, I had somebody that would say we're gonna take his left leg, and feed it to him.
Well, let's hope he doesn't have to walk to get to work.
Yeah, see, that's
But
the
there's
thing, right?
that.
So that's what I mean by the thermonuclear. You could, like say you have the DV case that we talked about a moment ago, where somebody's angry and loses. The other person could be angry and could go file a domestic violence restraining order. It would be justified in doing so. But in thinking about it, have you now done something that might have made it impossible for this person to have a livelihood?
Yeah.
What if they have a security clearance and now you've gotten a domestic violence restraining order? They can't use their security clearance. I mean, we're in a military town, so I used to see this a lot. You got to think about it. How are you going to use your weapons out of rage or out of strategy?
And are you cutting off your nose to spite your face, as we used to
Right.
say in England?
I always, if I'm going to use a tactic that is strong, and I used to do this when I litigated, I always ask myself a series of questions. And one of the questions is this actually going to help anything? Is this in the long run going to make my clients better off or worse off? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to be worse off. It doesn't mean that you need to go around and be a doormat and not protect yourself. But when you let your rage blind you, and then the strategy you employ is just about revenge and hurting people as opposed to legitimately protecting yourself, that's when you can run into problems.
So what's the takeaway?
What's the takeaway?
Well, I was wondering about how we can help any listener to deal with the fear of the other person's anger. Because I think that there's a lot of timidity when people are considering ending their marriages, and people stay in many times because of fear.
And also they don't want to bring up the things they need to bring up because they're afraid of the reaction of the other spouse.
Fair enough.
And and you can understand that. So what is our job? Our job is to create a safe container to have these very difficult conversations. And we need to make both people feel safe and secure within that framework, within the container we build in the collaborative or the co-mediation space, so that they feel protected and they can actually say what they need to say and don't feel that the other person will come across the table at them.
I guess the other takeaway is that I believe people need to understand that even though these are extreme circumstances that they are, feeling themselves bound in while they're at this level of conflict, to whatever extent it might help them, this anger and these trepidations are normal. It's par for the course, folks. Don't expect it not to be there. It's going to be there. But, use good people to try to help you work it through.
It's going to be there, and it's okay. And you can control it, and you can get help.
So how would they get help from you, Shawn Weber?
Well, they would go for any dispute that they might have. They would go to WeberDisputeResolution.com. That's WeberDisputeResolution.com. weberresolution.com. That's Weber with 1B, like the grill. And give me a call and we'll talk about how we can help you move forward.
Dr. Weiner,
And Mark, oh,
you're next.
well,
Next up.
I'm next. I'm Scott Weiner, Weiner. And I answer my own telephone. You would reach me at 619-417-5743. And I will be glad to speak with you.
And I am Mark Hill, and you would reach me through my website. My company is Pacific Divorce Management, and my website address is pacdivorce.com, PACDIVORCE. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and we'll be back with another one next week with a great guest. Shawn, why don't you talk a little bit about Mr. Eddy and what he is going to be bringing?
We have on our docket the great Bill Eddy, who is the internationally recognized authority on conflict and high conflict personalities and how to survive that conflict with a high conflict personality. And he's going to be sharing with us information about his new book, which is really going to be useful for folks that are locked in co-parenting disputes with a high conflict personality. So be sure to turn in next week for our special guest, Bill Eddy.
Thanks for listening, folks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Three Wise Men of Divorce: Money, Psych, and Law. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share with others who may be in a similar place. Until next time, stay safe, healthy, and focused on a positive, bright future. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Every family law case is unique, so no legal, financial, or mental health advice is intended during this podcast. If you need help with your specific situation, feel free to schedule a time to speak with one of us for a personal consultation.